You are live. And there she is, because she's a real person. Angie Singer Keating, my business partner, she's in her office. And because I have a really cool background, she says that I'm not a real person. By the way, also notice that her label, her title is Joe's Boss, which she'll get to later on. A couple things.
I think honesty, I think truth in advertising is very important.
I could not agree more. First of all, welcome to our very first scheduled LinkedIn Live event, Data Security Over Coffee. Many thanks go out to Eli Austin with Yazoo and the Yazoo Marketing Group. They've been our outsourced partner for years. If you're ever looking for any kind of marketing support or just to bounce around ideas, reach out to Eli. You can connect with him on LinkedIn. Obviously, if you have any kind of questions as a follow-up to our Data Security Over Coffee today, you can reach out to Angie. She's super smart. Please don't reach out to me because I'll just use ChatGPT to give you an answer because I don't really know anything. I'm just the goofball that sets up the platform. We're going to, according to Eli, we are going to explore key takeaways for Cybersecurity Month, wrapping it up. We're going to uncover emerging threats. Ooh. And we're going to gain actionable insights for year-round security. And Angie laughed at me earlier, for the well over 550 people that signed up today, guess what you're going to get? That's right, a 30 cybersecurity essentials checklist. Boom, just for you. So in all seriousness, Angie, thanks for your willingness to do this crazy thing with me once a month, but more importantly for our friendship and our business relationship. What I want to do, obviously, is give you the most amount of time to really talk about this whole wrap up of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, and not just that we're getting ready to go into Halloween and it's spooky, but what are the things that you've learned? What are the things that you think are important to share with folks?
Well, what I've noticed in the past 6 weeks is that there is really kind of there's been an inflection point in the kinds of incidents that we're having folks contact us about. Folks that have done all the things we told them to do around two-factor authentication, and some other, really critical things, are still having compromises because of Office 365 and compromised tokens and misconfigurations in Office 365. Some not their fault, some simply, Microsoft updating something and settings getting changed. And so it's kind of a new frontier, and we're seeing a lot of business email compromises. That's really, really troubling. And sometimes, when we're giving folks help and we're saying, these are the things you need to do, some of which are things that we can sell to them, some of which we can help them find a vendor to provide. But at the end of the day, it feels like there's never enough. And I'm sure clients feel that way. We feel that way as business owners having to secure our own environment. It's never enough. And so this inflection point really shows folks that if you had any illusions that good cyber hygiene was some kind of destination you'll get to, this time period of these business email compromises really is driving home the fact that it's whack-a-mole, it's layers, and those layers just keep having to be deeper and deeper and deeper to protect your organization.
Well, and I think the follow-on to that is to get people to understand that unlike, 5 years ago, information security doesn't have to break the bank. It obviously has to be budgeted correctly, scaled appropriately. You have to make it a line item in your budget. If you're simply going to say, hardware and infrastructure costs, and then we're going to lump this in this InfoSec thing, I think people are really they're going down the wrong path. Yeah. your idea of it just seems like it's always more and more, and the things that we read and the trends that we know that are occurring. The fact of the matter is, the people, whether you want to call them bad guys or not, but the people that have the ability to launch attacks and steal data make an incredible amount of money doing that. And so that incentive, that monetary incentive, is always going to drive the landscape to just have to get better and pay attention. There's no way around it. It's not like other challenges that we may have seen, because the bad guys make a lot of money. So in October, we had, I thought, a couple really cool events. In fact, if you can see it, my really cool coffee mug, the Funky Brunch Cafe from Savannah, Georgia. It's also orange because this is hunting season in Pennsylvania, so I'm big on fluorescent orange. But more importantly, you were invited to be a subject matter expert and speak to the Pennsylvania Association of Community Bankers in the area of information security. But why don't you kind of summarize, what was the content of the presentation, and what were the key takeaways that you hoped people left Savannah with, and really kind of, if there's any other follow-up to that you wanted to share today.
Well, the Pennsylvania Association of Community Banker folks were just incredible. They're super smart. They really are hyper vigilant about security. I think that's to be expected in the financial services sector that's had auditors and enforcement for so long. So they're a joy to work with. And quite a few folks took us up on our offer to pull their security ratings on their organization that cyber carriers use for helping to establish rates. And I think one of the best takeaways for me was seeing how good the grades are of many of these folks. Gives me, a high confidence level that the Pennsylvania community banks really have their act together when it comes to security practices. I hope the takeaway was from Savannah, because the topic was vendor risk management, third-party risk management, that they took away from it the fact that there's help out there. We can help them. We can either help them build their program, we can do their program and manage it for them. We can do a combination, and then ultimately help them kind of fly off on their own and not need our help anymore. So I hope it seemed like they took that away from the event, but it just solidified my opinion of working with that organization as an association, how well they support their members, how smart their members are, and that when we speak to them, we're talking to an audience of folks that don't just look at security as a checkbox.
I would agree. I think the other thing that's important too, when I had the chance to sit in the room during your presentation and talk to some of the folks afterwards, is I think there's two things, right? One is making that distinction between what we hear as an MSP and then that of an MSSP.
Right.
So we think of a managed service provider, that organization made up of however many number of folks that are going to take care of your PCs, your servers, your firewall, perhaps printers, peripherals. They're going to run your help desk. They're going to make sure that when you click print, things work, etc. Now, obviously, they are conscious of information security, but not necessarily do they have the depth and expertise of an MSSP, which is a managed security services provider, of which Reclamere is one.
Right.
And making sure that they understand that there is a stark difference. And just because somebody has a set of tools, or they've got some products, or they've got cool new marketing material, doesn't necessarily mean that they have the expertise that's going to be required to deal with things like, how do we develop an incident response plan and run a tabletop exercise? What do we do? How do we conduct a security risk analysis and then build someone a remediation roadmap? And I think, there's a very good friend of ours out there, John Barry from Barry Solutions Group, who is an MSP, and his philosophy has been, as we partner together, I don't want to be in a situation where the fox is watching the henhouse. He clearly understands that there has to be a delineation between what he does as a service provider and the work that we're doing to, for lack of a better term, to create checks and balances, not only for his client, but John wants to create checks and balances for Barry Solutions Group as well, which I think is an incredibly proactive way to look at running your business.
Yeah.
The other thing you mentioned too was the idea of, people not really needing us anymore and flying off on their own. And I think both you and I are aligned in the fact that, listen, if we come into an organization, and this has happened to us over the last however many years, and we work with an organization and we help them establish their information security policies, and we improve their posture and their risk position, et cetera, and then they get to the point, either because they have hired other staff, perhaps there's been merger and acquisition activity, but something has allowed them, as you would say, to fly on their own. We encourage that. I mean, we don't, obviously, like any other business, we don't want to see business go out the door. But by the same token, if we really can't bring that kind of ongoing value any longer, and if they're on a good trajectory and they're going in the right direction, by all means, I think that's a very positive thing for an organization to experience. I really do.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, I'll take you on a trip down memory lane. I remember when the first client of ours started to approach that maturity level and growth. And I remember, talking to you about, they're not going to need us much longer. And you were pretty upset. You're a salesperson. It's hard to find clients. It's hard to get them on board, keep them on board, service them, and you work really hard to build these relationships. But that's the kind of company we are. There's an internal checks and balances as well, where I'm not going to sell somebody services that they don't need. And I'm not going to hang around longer than we need to hang around. There are organizations that will work with us forever. We have clients that we've had literally for 22 years. That's fantastic. And we love those clients. But I'm also super proud of the few that have now gotten to some point where they have grown and they don't need us. The great thing is they still call us for expertise and specialty things. And that's wonderful. And it's great to watch how you've also grown as a salesperson, because the other thing that I take away from all of these business email compromises is that, and also in working with MSPs, in helping them with their clients, there's plenty of business out there. There are no shortage of clients that need dedicated cybersecurity expertise. And the threats just keep changing. So it's been good to watch that maturity, but I know I sympathize for you as a salesperson that has to be difficult.
So let me ask you this. So we've got in the beginning of the conversation, so we can kind of go back to the original intent, which was, what are the key takeaways? What are the things that we're trying to really share with people as a wrap up? So we talked about business email compromise. We talked about third-party vendor risk management. We've talked about the difference between an MSP and an MSSP. What are the other things that, as we wrap up October, you really want people to be aware of and really paying attention, especially now because many of our clients are in budget season, getting ready for the 2024 spend. What are the other things that they've got to be paying attention to?
Well, the biggest thing I really would like folks out there to consider, to get in their budget, is getting specialty vulnerability scanning and risk assessment around their Office 365 implementations. There's this idea that I went to Office 365, now I'm super secure because Microsoft is handling all my security. And that's just simply not the case. You still have to configure properly. You still have to constantly manage those configurations for changes. And so the folks we're seeing who are having some of the worst breaches and security incidents right now, it is all because of issues around Office 365. And so, we can come in and do an assessment of that environment and kind of be that second set of eyes for your IT folks, whether it's an MSP or your in-house IT folks, and give you a little peace of mind that your configuration is something secure. And where we do find things that can be approved on, oftentimes the things that can be approved on are the things that you already have in your Microsoft subscription. It's not like you have to go buy more stuff. It just needs to be better finely tuned, and that's exactly what we can do.
So the other thing that was kind of cool in October is we actually had a client of ours sponsor a coordinated incident response plan tabletop exercise.
That was fun.
That was fun. Well, not only was fun, but it was interesting to, first of all, that they wanted to sponsor it and actually bring their peer group together. Number two, that they were kind enough to invite Reclamere to facilitate that for those teams of people. I think the other thing was there's a realization that, it used to be a few years ago, people were just kind of challenged by, how do I build an incident response plan? So we kind of got over that hurdle, right? And then it was building an incident response plan, running tabletop exercises with scenarios and playbooks, and now turning around and saying, kind of evolving it a little bit further and saying, okay, not only are you building an incident response plan, not only are you running a tabletop exercise, but you have a technical tabletop exercise that you go through, and then you have an administrative tabletop exercise that you go through. So speak to this particular group was running through an incident response plan tabletop exercise on the admin side to see how all of their other partner organizations would or would not respond if they had to press the oh my gosh button. So talk about what that experience was like as a facilitator, as those people came together and kind of went through the scenario together.
Well, I'm going to invent a new, service offering right now. As you know, I've done over 23 years. I just pull things out of the air. What we did for them was a business impact tabletop exercise. We've done technical tabletop exercises with them before. Here's the scenario. You come in, everything is encrypted and all your data is held hostage. What are we going to do? Who's going to start looking at logs? Who's going to start isolating machines? All the technical stuff. But the coolest thing about this is that we finally got folks who listened when we talked about who's your legal counsel and what role are they going to play?
Right.
You have in-house counsel. You're going to have outside counsel. Do you have cyber liability coverage? In this organization, they have multiple divisions that all have their own cyber policies. Mm-hmm. Whose policy is going to file the claim? How are we going to talk to the press? What are we going to do when you have no ability to submit payroll and your employees are not going to get paid for weeks unless you handwrite checks? Who's going to write the 1,500 to 2,000 paychecks, hard copy checks to get people paid? And what are we going to do when people's mortgages and other commitments, financial commitments those employees have, they can't meet? What are we going to do? And so helping them walk through that. And I love just watching the wheels turn on the attendees. Every single organization is different. Every single way you're going to handle that is going to be different. And so it was just fascinating to watch people from finance go, oh, I never thought about that. Right. Watching people, watching legal. And the coolest thing about these folks, 2 of their legal counsel were there. You know, we've had different times where folks are like, well, legal counsel says they know what to do. They don't need to be involved.
Right.
Okay. But we realize that it goes way, way, way deeper than that. And so, in that 2 hours, what we packed into that 2 hours with that group I saw so many people taking notes, and we've done their incident response plans for several of those groups that were part
Mhm.
of this, and we already know places we're going to be revising their incident response plan to help them as a result. So business impact tabletops are just as important as, if and possibly more important, because your technical folks, for the most part, know what to do. Either your MSP knows what to do, or your internal IT folks know what to do, or in the case of you have cyber coverage, cyber liability coverage, they're going to send in their own forensics people and their own folks who are going to help you recover on the technology side. But what are you going to do from your mission critical functions, taking care of your employees, taking care of your clients? How are you going to handle all of that? And that's the conversation that we led them through, and it was fantastic. I enjoyed every minute of that.
Yeah, I think they all did a really good job, but the follow up they had received from a few folks was, they were in an environment where they didn't feel threatened, and they because people did have their share of mistakes. There were things that they thought they would do that they really wouldn't do.
Mm-hmm.
There were some people going, well, I thought that person did it, and the other person turned and said, no, it's that person that does it. And I think that's the true value of being able to have that tabletop exercise before it really is live fire, because now it's a different conversation, it's a different tempo and emotion, etc.
Yeah.
So okay, we are the 26th of October, 5 more days before spooky Halloween. And if you were to get folks that are listening now or later on as this thing cranks through LinkedIn, what is the one thing that you would and it doesn't have to be a client. I don't care what the market is. I don't care the size of the organization. None of those things matter. Just in general, what would be the one thing that you would strongly encourage organizations to do effective January 2nd, 2024?
Is this a trick? Because you already asked me that, and I told you just a couple minutes ago. They need to
Well,
get their Office 365 environment assessed.
really? That's all you got? Like nothing else?
Okay. The other thing, based on what we're seeing, is you better know what is in the mailboxes of your employees. Are they downloading spreadsheets out of your HR system that have every employee's social security number on it and it's sitting in their sent mail?
Scary.
It is very scary. And
Mhm.
so data loss protection is back to top of mind. Knowing what kind of documents folks are using their email box as a repository for, if it contains PII or EPHI, you need to build some controls, really strong controls around that, because email was never meant to be a document management system, and it certainly was never meant to be a secure document repository. Once the bad guys get into the mailbox, just the act of looking at something, or the possibility they might have looked at something in the healthcare world, means you've got a breach investigation on your hands. And so get that PII, get that EPHI out of those mailboxes.
So assess your Office 365 environment and make sure that you don't have the wrong stuff in your email boxes. Fair to
Yes.
say?
Yeah,
Okay. Okay.
absolutely. We
Cool.
can help folks with both of those things.
Well, and there's one more thing that's really important, because
Okay.
something really cool, super cool, is happening this weekend for our youngest honey badger.
Ah, yes.
Would you like to tell everybody what that is?
Yes.
Okay.
Meredith Harris.
Meredith Harris,
Yes, Meredith
who worked
Harris.
with us. She left, she came back, and she is, first of all, she's probably one of the quietest people I've ever worked with. Although, as I've told you before, and now she's going to know, my effort has been each day trying to get one more word out of her than I did the day before, and it's beginning to work. It's beginning to work. But please tell me, what is Meredith going to be doing this weekend?
Well, I also want to clarify too, Meredith didn't leave. She came on board to help us with a very large project. And then when that project was over, we thought, okay, we weren't going to need her help. Turns out we very much did. She was in demand by fellow staff members who worked with her because she is so good at what she does. But Meredith is an accomplished equestrian. She is just a brilliant horsewoman, and she is an incredibly hard worker. This is her very last year of being able to compete in 4-H. And she competes in something called hunter jumpers, some other classes too. But basically, she takes horses over big fences. She's super brave, and she has a gorgeous, wonderful horse named Stiletto. And they are going to be competing this weekend at the Harrisburg Farm Show Complex in the state championships for 4-H. And we're super
Whoa.
proud of her. We're super excited. It's her last year to compete. So we know she's going to do fantastic. And we're going to be sure that when she wins all of her ribbons, we're going to put out on social media what she accomplishes this weekend. But she's just a typical honey badger. They have really cool lives outside of our office, and we're all super, super proud of them.
Well, as always, thank you for putting up with me and your willingness to do this. And obviously, as we've gone through this, the few times that you have corrected me for being wrong, which I know I can always depend on you to do. That's just part of your nature. It's great.
Just my job, dude.
It's your job because you're at the bottom of the screen, Joe's boss. That's very important. And don't worry, I will find an acronym for BOSS that is appropriate that I will share with you when we go to Orlando next month. So cybersecurity wrap up. We're done. Thank goodness. It's been a good month. But obviously, cybersecurity is something that is a 12-month commitment, not just for the month of October, obviously, right? And like I said earlier, for those of you that had registered, we will be sending over to you a 30 cybersecurity essentials checklist. No, we will not dog you, haunt you, or terrorize your inbox. Also, I would say that as a special Halloween treat, if you're interested in what Angie had mentioned earlier, which is taking a look at your cybersecurity score, and you would like to have that conversation with her, and yes, now I'm going to blow up her inbox, reach out to Angie via LinkedIn. So you got to do a little bit of work. You can't miss her. She's got more letters after her last name than in her last name, which I think is pretty fascinating. But reach out to Angie, and I'm sure she'll be able to help you. Wishing you all a great October, a great fourth quarter, and we'll see you next month. Data security over coffee.